created everything. Look what a powerful being you are. You did these things, but now you're in a human body, you forget the power you have.
What you do is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing.
You're doing it.
Doing what?
Using your imagination.
Welcome to Metamystics, where you don't know what you don't know. My name's Jonathan, and today we have a very special guest. Really excited to have this conversation. Welcome to the show, Cristallina.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. It's such great joy being here. I'm really so excited. I'm excited to share so much to your listeners, and yeah, let's get into it.
Let's jump all the way in. I'm always really excited to see, what exactly was it that challenged people, that there's an awakening that happens with everybody out there. A lot of people, you start looking into certain things, you take a certain curiosity, and you start questioning, why are you here? Where are you going? And I feel like everybody throughout human history has probably wondered that a time or two, and most people will say, well, there's already this structure called religion, and it tells you everything already. And then other people are like, I don't know. I mean, it's a cool story, but I don't know if that sounds exactly right, And so then it's up to the individual to kind of go on this process and pave their own way, almost like you have a tiny little flashlight and all that's in front of you is completely dark. And now you might be able to get some examples from other people, and maybe they say some keywords, or they say something that you know that you've experienced, and maybe it lightens up that hallway a little bit more, But for the most part, it's an individual process, and it's up to you to take the initiative to take all the steps and graduate a little bit with your awakening. And so I'm always curious, how did you find that path? What was it that kind of sparked your curiosity into it?
It's such a beautiful question, because I think a lot of us in the awakened, higher consciousness community, we already know the innate answers to that, and it's very, there's sort of common ground there. But for people out there who haven't even experienced an awakening, it's like, what? I can't believe you've never experienced not even one, because as we know, there's many awakenings even in our lifetime as we spiral and ascend forward rather than forward. It's more spiraling upwards, right? An ascension. So I had many awakenings. I think I'll start with my childhood. It started off with my childhood, where I'm sure, again, like your listeners will vouch for this and may have experienced this themselves, or even you yourself, Jonathan, where I wasn't able to sleep at night. I had lots of paranormal activity. I couldn't understand it. I thought maybe it's because I was a child and I was sort of imagining things. Seldom was I able to sleep through a night in my own bed. I had to get into my parents' bed, maybe like at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. I didn't look at the watch or the clock or whatever it was, but I remember that every single night was just, it was horrible. It was like, am I going to sleep tonight? And I was a child that had obviously hypersensitivity and heightened, sensorial sensitive experiences. But I also had a lot of extracurricular activity from school. So I was doing violin classes after school. I was doing athletics after school. I was mainly doing ballet after school at my ballet school. And I was also doing Italian school along with my English school. So I was at the age of 8, 9, when I think it's around that age actually where you start to understand identity. Who is it? Carl Jung speaks about it, or Freud talks about the id, so there's a kind of understanding of perception of identity and who I am. So I understood that I was someone, a being that had different interests from other people. And my sense of identity was starting to form. And we left that house when my parents separated. And I shared the story in another podcast recently, which I've loved to share again. And we sold the house and we moved to we moved into a flat in central London. And that was already traumatizing because we had this really big house. My parents separated. I was like, is mommy and daddy going to get back together or what? So I was in denial for like 5 years, just with that, and the trauma of that as a child, as a 9-year-old, 9-year-old into 10-year-old. And hearing a story where my mum said in conversation, I said, Mummy, I was 9. I was like, Mummy, why was all this stuff? Why was all this noise going on? Do you remember we were in the kitchen downstairs in the old house and we would hear footsteps in the corridor between my bedroom and the bathroom upstairs? And she said, well, let me tell you a story. And my mother is massively clairvoyant. She's also a shaman like myself. We come from a strong line of shamancas in Colombia, connected to the Incan line. So there's Quechua and we are Quichua. So there's that. But again, as a 9-year-old, no one understands that as a 9-year-old, right? So she was saying, she was praying to Mother Mary downstairs, the Divine Feminine. And she would pray to the Divine Feminine, Mother Mary, to say, look, let this spirit who's in the house just find peace. That's all we want. And so we also found out through this conversation that Mum and I, that I found out during the conversation, is that a woman knocked at our door one day and she kept looking at our house and she kept looking at my bedroom, which was the nursery room. And basically she said, my family, I used to live here, my family and we grew up here, and there's a bit of a sad story. And so my mum let her in to the house, and this is all, God, goddess, honest truth. She said that she had her baby with her, and she said that, my mother, she died in that room, pointing to my bedroom. And it goes deeper, is that the reason for her passing was because her father wanted to annul the marriage, or wanted to have a separation or a quick divorce from the marriage and marry a young Filipino lady. And it is said that the mother was poisoned and died in my bedroom. Hence all the knocking, hence the restless spirit. So, come to find out, as I get older, I realized that I was a pure vessel, a channel, a radio station that the people who had passed on, the dead, wanted to communicate to me with. I had vivid imagery. I remember having this specific dream in that particular room. And I had sleep paralysis, but I had this very specific dream where there was three doors in front of me, and I was in a circle, and there were doors all around me, and I remember specifically 3 rooms. Now, the popular culture in my day, in the 80s, early 90s, was, for me, Disney and pop music. So I knock on one door, and there's the evil stepmother from Sleeping Beauty. I'm like, okay, that's scary. Close the door. I open another door. I can't open another door, and it was a lion. There was a massive lion in there with a huge mane. And then another door was Michael Jackson, and he like popped out. I'm like,
oh my God.
Okay,
so
this is crazy.
It's literally just projections of your subconscious manifesting as what you would deem to be scary.
That's it. But I loved Michael Jackson. I still do. And,
I mean, in Thriller, he's
his
a little
music,
terrifying, but
yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was my sort of projection of my popular culture at that time. And I remember having those dreams. And as you get older, you understand, okay, the doors are portals. And when you have dreams like that, you're entering a dream within a dream, and you're manifesting a particular reality or timeline that you want to get into. So essentially, I kept having experiences, like particularly, the experience of just completely being still and not being able to move, and essentially trying to have a demonic possession. I didn't understand that at the time, and I didn't know whose energy was connected to me. But we had some interesting people that had lived in the locations that we lived in before. There were some interesting people that had come into our house through parties that weren't really part of the family, but they were a little bit dodgy, you know. And so I think maybe it was their energy and their projections. So what I had experienced as I got older in the new flat is that area is heavy in Marylebone in London. It's dense with restless spirits. People who have been to war, who were soldiers, who were taken to the gallows, that were taken specifically for medical research, because the area of Marylebone next door to Mayfair is surgery. It's clinical understanding. So the surgeons during the Victorian age would ask Tom, Dick, or Harry, I'll give you a few bob, London speak, I'll give you some money so that you can go to East London, which was back then like the Bronx in New York, or like the worst place, you know, supposedly, quote unquote, that the local gentry wouldn't, you know, the gentry wouldn't live. Anyway, so aristocracy didn't live there, is what I'm saying. So the worst of the worst, the criminal, like this was before the Cray brothers turned up. So they said, look, I need a body, okay, and I need to research this body. So they said, don't worry, I'll go and get you a body. And so they went to get bodies, and sometimes, and there's kind of part of the Jack the Ripper story as well, and it's connected to the aristocracy and also East London and just dodgy dealings. And so basically where I was living in is the area of clinical research and surgery. So, and then some of these people who had committed crimes from East London would be marched through into central London and then sent to Marble Arch to be hung. So it was kind of this whole ritual, this whole ceremony in the area, in the vortex where I was living in as a child and then into teenagehood, which obviously freaked me the heck out. For some reason, though, I was still really into it. Like, I don't know how, but something got me really into, okay, we have plates in the kitchen that are being like flung. So there's a poltergeist. So I'm understanding what a poltergeist is, and mum doing whatever she needs to do to talk to the spirit and be like, yo, can you just stop? Because my child and I are terrified and we need to chill out, and we understand you're trying to communicate to us, but basta, like that's enough, you know? And so there was a lot of that, but there was this book that I read, and now I remember it. It's called Communion, and it's about aliens. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's based on ufology activity, particularly in the United States. And this person who's recounting these stories of what he had experienced and then other people that he had interviewed or spoken to about. And this book's called Communion. And the front cover of this book, Communion, has this massive grey alien on it with, I think, a green background. And I would just look at it and just stare at it.
That's Whitley Strieber. Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Why did I get this book at 11 years old? You know, that's the one.
Yep.
Yeah. And my cover was kind of like a more modernized version of it. Or at least that's how I saw it in my head. It was like green, and yeah, that's the book.
Wow.
Why is an 11-year-old reading that book? And why was my mum allowing me to read that?
It sounds like you were born to be initiated at a young age. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yes. And I read the full book, and the strangest thing, that there was lots of among many stranger things. There was this a lot of people who've passed on want to communicate, and they communicate through radio. And like, I had a Tamagotchi, and like, you know, the Tamagotchi would go off, and I still had the plastic bit to it, so I would just put the plastic bit and switch it off, so it would, you know, would switch off. But I had the Tamagotchi going, I had my alarms going, and the alarm didn't have a battery in it. It was in my drawer. It wasn't active. It wasn't activated. Like, I had my Game Boy was going off, like my radio. Like, it was always at night. And And I remember, strangely, the day before Princess Diana passed away, the cupboard, so the wardrobe that I have, in American English it's a closet that you open and close, right? So this wardrobe that I had opened and closed, just the sound of like dish like that. And it was again at 2 a.m. And the next day I found out that Princess Diana passed away. And so I would tell all my friends in the playground, I think Princess Diana came to visit me at night, which obviously may not necessarily be true, but my imagination as a child and then all the activity that was going on in real non-physical experiences, I kind of put 2 and 2 together.
Oh my God.
But there's more.
That's first of all, that's insane just to even bring up all these things. And then you're like, then there's more. But all these things are crazy that they're happening inside your house, especially where you're living and the history of, that whole area. I have a hard time trying to compartmentalize what is really going on with ghosts and like lost spirits and stuff like that. I know that a lot of people will say that, well, how you get a ghost is because maybe they died in a horrific way and they don't know that they're dead, or they died in such a horrific way that they forgot that they actually died. And so they're still trying to essentially walk around and in regular daily life, and they're lost, they're wanderers. And I don't know how to compartmentalize that in the sense of I have an idea in my mind about what happens whenever we die, not a religious standpoint at all. But I believe that maybe we kind of just go back to the all encompassing us, whatever that is. And maybe that's happening at a soul level, and maybe at a consciousness level, which would be the manifested version of that soul, I believe, is still wandering around. I mean, what do you think about all that? Like, do you think that there's a certain aspect that goes back to God or to the whole of us or the universe or whatever, and in that kind of way? And the reason I bring that up before you answer that is because I'm really big into Neoplatonism, like Neoplatonic thought, where they have certain aspects, and basically the one, which they call the one or the source, some may call it God, is projecting itself onto these different levels and all the way down to what we know as physical reality. So you have the God is essentially trying to get to know itself through projections of itself. And the most dense projection of itself would be the manifested reality, which is what we get to experience in the physical reality. Now, I'm of the belief that whenever we die, we just go back to wherever the projection is coming from, right? But do you think that there are some aspects of us that may get caught in the layers before that, maybe?
I mean, it's such a big question. And first of all, the more I know about something, the less I know about it. The more I have a concrete idea of, oh, this is what God is, the more I'm like, yeah, but I don't think they would make it that easy, And I think part of the path of this life, at least for me, is to understand that, or interpretations of that. Now, when you're sharing, these kind of different projections ideas, I think about The Architect and The Matrix, which is, for me, one of my absolute favorite films, and had initiated so many people during that time into an awakening. And the other thing that I'm thinking about as well is simulacra and simulation. Like, I think, if anything, also someone who speaks a few languages, I think that when we have an idea, because a language is a matrix in itself, and I think that when we are within that language matrix, it is restrictive. So it's kind of on the same level of, if you can know as many languages as possible, you can have more of an understanding of different cultures and different perceptions, different ways of thinking, different ways of feeling. Because one sentence in English is completely different in Arabic, for example. Not that I speak Arabic, but I have a love for Arabic. So the thing is, I think there is a God of this world, this planet Earth. I do. I think that I think that God is a cell. It's also an atom. It's also Mother Gaia. the earth. I also think that we have God within us, and personally, in my own connection, which I'm sure we'll get into later, I do have a strong connection with Yeshua, the prophet Jesus, otherwise known as Isa in Japan and in Islam, where I've had very interesting experiences with that. Christ consciousness awakening connected to the Kundalini activation, which is the same.
Right.
And I don't know. I think that we're fed some sort of lie about what our reality is. And I think maybe it's just a dream. I like to think of it like that, and
You
that
are
we don't know
speaking-
anything.
You are speaking my language. I always call this a dream. Like, I'm like, all right, Matrix, simulation. No, dream sounds more realistic to me for some reason.
Yeah, because even like, the film Inception, I think they did, is it Christopher Nolan, I think, did that.
Yep.
Such a mind warp within that. But I think we get to understand and appreciate metaphysics. We get to understand quantum physics more. Near-death experiences are real. The soul leaving its physical body is real. I've personally experienced it.
I'm going to need to hear about that later.
Yeah, put a pin on that one. But yeah, there's just. But I also think that the word God again is such a finite word, and I do think I think connecting with Om, like the sound of Om, helps us to get to that frequency, if anything.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they say that was the first sound in the universe. That was
exactly
the manifested word that created creation, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. But it is interesting how, like, even our DNA has fractures in it. That we have. There's a splicing in our DNA, and scientists still can't understand what happened between that point, and then this kind of like welding together of our I don't know, DNA structure.
Yeah, it's the capping of the telomeres that happened roughly 200,000 years ago, I think.
That's it. So something must have happened, and I'm sure scientists are researching it, and I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but we know that a lot of them probably weren't able to get tenure, at their universities that they were teaching, so they had to sort of comply with the program, the programming, the television, the vision of that is being televised. The forecasting, all these words again, matrices, and so I find it must be really difficult for great minds like that, quantum mechanics, like professors, people of that ilk, who understand a bit like ourselves, who understand there's two ways to play the game of life, and you can play this way or that way. For me right now, I'm finding it quite interesting playing both. And sort of, I wouldn't say occupying the Tao principle fully, because I'm really not that, I would say, dedicated or perfect. But even the chant of in Ayurveda and Sanskrit, I am perfect, this is perfect, everything comes from perfect, perfect is zero, perfect is nothing. Everything is perfect. I mean, in a way, it is perfection that
Right.
I'm not perfectly aligned with the equality and the equanimity of this or that. I'm navigating it as a being. And even me saying human, I found out the other day that it doesn't actually mean what we think it means. It means monster. So
Whoa.
I don't consider
Human
myself
means
a monster. Yeah, I need to look into what the gerundive is, like where its provenance comes from, because I don't know whether it's Aramaic or Chaldean, or I have no idea.
That kind of lends a little bit of credence to, if you go to the Abrahamic texts, they talk about, and I've long had this theory, and people think I'm crazy for it, and I could be totally wrong, but I believe that whenever they say that there were a third of angels that were cast down from heaven, and they they came to Earth, essentially like light falling into matter. I believe, and people will call those demons. They'll call them, whatever, Nephilim or whatever, right? I think, and especially I'm telling you, your mind will be blown if you look at this chapter in the Bible. It's from Genesis 6, where they talk about the Nephilim, supposedly Nephilim giants. But if you look at the context of what is going on between Genesis 6 and I think in basically the whole chapter of Genesis 6, it is talking about how man fell and or light fell and came into man or something weird like that.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that angels came down from heaven and then they started having sex with earth people. And, this whole Nephilim story, I'm like, it sounds like too fantastical. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't sound real. And I think that it's more likely that we kind of succumbed, we as a consciousness or whatever, succumb to the material world. And now we see our reality as humans, or, you know what I mean? And not necessarily of pure light from heaven or however you want to call it. And I think that just makes the most amount of sense. I don't think that there ever was angels that came down and mated with earth women, as they say. It makes zero sense. Why would that happen?
I know.
And they'll say even in the Bible that angels, they have no free will. So how would they make that decision in the first place?
Yeah, well, because it's part of the universal laws, isn't it? That one must respect another person's another person's free will. Like there is the law of attraction, like there is the law of opposites, polarity, etc. I didn't think that either until I read the Book of Enoch. And that blew my mind. And like most of your listeners, and much like yourself, you're delving into content and research and channels like Gaia TV, for example, and you go deeper into the rabbit hole. There's so many of them, and it's so fantastical. But most of them do say that reality is stranger than fiction. Like, it's almost the same as science fiction is actually science reality. It's already been done. It's just a timeline where that's going to evolve, where we collectively, consciously adhere to, okay, this is what's going to be televised in our reality today. I think with that idea or ideology, I look at what other cultures are thinking, and it does seem to be this general consensus that people are pretty on board with that idea from other nations, like the Great Flood or many floods. So how do they communicate to each other? We've got stories in my family. I'm Italian and I'm Colombian, and in my Colombian family we have stories about, Isla de Pascua, the Easter Island, like the big heads, being so heavily coded just within that, one head, and were they the heads of some big, Nephilim? I don't know, but I think the question is, why not? Why not at this point? Why not? I think it would be very arrogant for us to say that this doesn't exist because it doesn't align with my education. It doesn't exist with my level of comfort. And as we know, spirituality is so vast. It's about energy. It's about spirit and non-physical worlds. And the probability is definitely there. The maths is mathing,
100%. And I try to really keep an open mind with just about everything. And that's why the saying on the show is, you don't know what you don't know, because as soon as you learn something, it opens up 100 new questions that you never thought you would have even asked. But that answer to that one question inspired all these other questions. And it's a beautiful spiraling Mandelbrot set of equations, essentially, is what's going on. And I suppose that other beings absolutely could exist. There's no doubt about it. If everything is consciousness, and all we are as humans, I don't even try to identify as human anymore, to be honest with you. It's just such a fucking foreign term to me. But if we identify as humans, then that means that, well, this is a vehicle or a vessel for consciousness to experience in. And of course that would open up the door for, other vessels to invite other consciousnesses to experience itself through that lens. And so maybe we got giraffes, dude. We got like hippos. You know what I mean? There's platypus out there running in the wild that have consciousness inside of them, experiencing what that life would be like through the eyes of a platypus. So I guess why not a Nephilim or a demon, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, why not? We have such
I battle
limited.
myself all the time with this stuff, to be real with you.
No, I get it, and me too. Here. You know, we limit our reality by what we can't see, and what we see is informed with light. And there's a metaphorical aspect to that, but there's also the physical aspect to that, scientific aspect to that. So just because we can't see it, and now we're going into physics that is like quantum, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so
we have limited faculties for sure. Yeah, we can't.
We have
see
limited
everything.
faculties.
Right.
Yeah, I'm always reminded of the bee and wasps because they, you know, they're so incredible. They have so many perceptions of color that I'm inside pretty jelly about, because I would love to see all of their kaleidoscopic point of view. And I'm not privy to that. I have other senses, but I'm not privy to what's the color between blue and purple. I want to know that. I want to feel that. I want to experience that. And these little buggers are flying around and like, I'm just living my best life. You know, also the thing about politics and like the programming and like all the fear mongering and everything. I just spent a really nice staycation during the Easter break in West Sussex. And I was like in the countryside. I'm based in the countryside myself, but my work is based in London. But I was in West Sussex and it's so beautiful. And I feel like it was a vortex energy there. And it just elevated me because of its geological location. I was quite high up. And I just thought about these little buggers, these little bees and butterflies and flowers, and they don't care about what's going on with the world, you know, apart from their experience of the world, which is their priority is to pollinate and to, and if anything, to show us, give us a teachable moment, which is stay in the moment, you know.
Oh yeah,
stay on target. If
just
anything.
the fact that they're able to levitate with their tiny little wings, it's like showing everybody like a whole new physics at that point. And I think that they probably found some kind of way to reverse engineer just the way that a bee is able to vibrate itself into the air. You know,
they have in the 60s. I think your way in the US in the 60s, they had already looked at dragonflies and reverse engineered them. So that was then. And that was showcased to the public. So I was, you know, it's always as above, so below, as within, so without. Also with that, okay, so what's going on inside? You know, I'm of the mentality of what's going on inside, what's going on where I can't see. I want to cast light to that. And sometimes as a light worker, it triggers people. The other day I was at my local pub actually, and I never go there. And I was there with some friends, and I just sat down, had my drinks. We had a really great time for 2 hours. And then suddenly out of nowhere, we were just asked to leave really rudely. And there was no provocation there. Energy never lies. Some people don't want their mess to be seen. They don't want to be looked at. And you know, you've experienced this, your listeners have experienced this. It's like, what did I do? Okay, rather than what did I do question, thank you for showing me that I am presenting myself in a certain way that triggers you to also be in your authentic self, in your authentic light. And to do the shadow work, which takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to look at our demons, our own inner demons, our own even inner Nephilim, our own inner monster, like getting really, really dark and dirty about it, and not just accepting it, but transmute it as alchemists that we are. You know, alchemists, botanists that we are, magicians, wizards and witches. For me and how I work is for the greater good, not about manipulation. So I thought that was a really interesting reflection, you know, that I'd experienced.
Oh, yeah. And I would say probably the biggest challenge is to exist in a world where like most people around us are not doing shadow work, all while we're trying to do our own shadow work, and almost like, all right, every time my blood pressure goes up, my anger goes up, or frustration, or lack of patience, or any of that kind of stuff, it is something that you have to remind the body that you can't let that emotion take hold of your entire being. Otherwise, it will essentially mirror out into reality, and now the rest of your day is going like that. And it's a very easy example of, you know, if you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do as upon getting out of bed is stub your toe. Now everybody knows that is one of, I mean, I would almost rather be stabbed in the eyeballs. You know what I mean? Like, don't stub your toe in the first thing in the morning. You're not even fully awake, but now you got a jolt of lightning literally electrocuting you in the morning after you haven't even had a sip of coffee yet. And so whenever that happens, it boils your blood and it milks your frustration. And now you have a lack of patience for everything going on. And it's a snowball effect, because if you allow that emotion to carry you throughout the day, this is why you get people that say, oh, well, you know, it's just sucked my entire day from the time I woke up until the time I went to sleep. It's because they didn't become conscious of the fact that they can manipulate and kind of calm down those emotions and those feelings. And maybe then your reality won't mirror back to what is going on inside. It really is an as above, so below kind of situation that is going on right there. And man, I feel like everybody experiences that, you know, at some level. It will snowball if you're not, you know, consciously aware of your inner self.
Yeah, and it's like when we participate in ceremonial work, or when we take ceremonial medicine, you know, we are confronted sometimes quite harshly, like, okay, it's spiraled out of control from this specific event, and you're sent back to that specific event. Imagine the politicians of this world, if they were able to actually heal that inner child wound from the very principal point, and not be most likely so reactive and so egoic. Because remember how I mentioned, you know, 8 years old, 9 years old, especially the first 6 years of one's life as a child, it informs the rest of your life. But at 8 or 9, you're starting to form the ego. So, you know, I mean, I think in the United Kingdom, there are more people coming back to positive ritual, finding God, let's say, so to speak, in their own way, maybe through your own pagan practices or whatever it is, you know. And in this way, they're able to understand a bit better and contribute their light to the world, you know. Like meditation, it's been proven that you put 50 people together, 100 people together praying for peace, it has a magnanimous effect that's, you know, so positive to the general outcome. And again, we are all contributing to, sadly, unfortunately, we're all contributing to certain corruptions and certain things that happen, but sometimes in a good way, so that we can actually see the darkness that does come out to light, especially during this new age, this new era that we're all experiencing. It's really rocky. We knew it was going to be a bit rocky. It's got rockier, but sometimes it's got to get really dark in order for all of it to be cleared out completely. That scorpionic energy, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And everything does exist on a pole, you know, and that's, in order for there to be absolute light, there needs to basically be absolute darkness. You know,
Yeah.
it has to exist on a sliding pole. And you know, if you're kind of just stuck in the middle, then you're only going to experience the gray. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think the gray is a safe place, and a lot of people really prefer to stay there. You don't get too high up, you don't get too low down, and you're just happy staying in the center. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But all right, I want to get back to, I want to hear about this near-death experience. I'm like on the edge of my seat. I need to know. So before we get into that, you've tried plant medicine before, whether it be, have you tried specific?
Yeah.
Which one have you tried?
Yeah. Yes, I have. I mean, the thing is, this was before before actual set and setting, before it being in a container, ceremonial, with a shaman. This was just a 16-year-old kid, with her friends, just kind of having some mushrooms, and or we're 18 and I'm at university and let's do it in the woods, So I experienced it in that way, and I can't remember it really, to be honest with you. And then later on doing snow. But I think that the thing that I'd experienced with all of those DRUGS, I'm not sure if I'm able to say it here on the podcast.
You can say whatever you want. We're totally unfiltered.
Okay, thank you. So, and thank you for that as well. But the freedom of speech is so important, so important to be able to express yourself in the way that it's valid to you.
I agree.
Before it's cancelled. George Orwell, 1984 vibes. Anyway, I digress. I feel like we're kind of going on tangents. But anyway, so I think that those were experiences that I had to take at that time when after I read Communion, I just went, stop, that's enough. Like, I remember screaming it out loud in my head saying, stop, because I was about 11 or 12. And I just thought, I don't want to have any more of this communication, any more of this communion. And it stopped. So I wasn't able, so my spiritual channel was completely cut off. I just didn't have any more paranormal activity. Mum would talk about it on her own, but there was a shield that had happened between then and the age of 28. So between then and the age of 28, I was sort of living a very matrix life sort of thing. So I was, being a good girl at school, like getting my qualifications. I was also doing Italian school as well. And I then went to my secondary school. My secondary school, I got another initiation. This is kind of going back to your first question, and it's all really connected. At 11 years old, I was initiated into transcendental meditation because the school was dealing with Ayurveda as its main principle. And every subject was based on Vedic teachings. And so we had a guru that we had meditation checks once a month to check if we were meditating correctly. Sounds kind of culty. There was a culty element to it. I wasn't involved in that element, thankfully, but
I think that's awesome.
it was really kind of funky and really cool. And I think that part of my training as a starseed being on this planet is to document as a scribe. So a lot of me is writing, reading. I've so many books, so many journals and all this. So I'm documenting different experiences and near close cult experiences where they've tried to pull me in, and I just go, no, I'll just focus from the outside in, sort of thing. And so even after school, I was having some fun with recreational drugs, I guess. Not in a really strong way, but you're able to start drinking at a young age in the UK and in Italy. So there's that too. And it was kind of just another way of forming my sense of identity. I don't really have an addictive personality, by the way. So the chemical balance in my brain doesn't allow me to get really obsessed with like a particular drug or whatever. So anyway, so there's all of that. Okay, so there's recreational drugs, there's having fun, there's also like weird transcendental meditation school, but also very like academic, high achieving private girls' school. Okay, and then there's my Italian school, which is based on Catholicism. So when I'm going to my classes, we're doing the holy prayer at the beginning, and then but it's the same but different. Beginning of class in English Indian school, it was Om Marapadmane Nama Atta. So it's like, whatever I'm about to receive, let it come through me. And then at the end, we go, Om Marapadmane Nama Iti, at the end. So there's all of that. And then I go to university and I come back, and then I have a few years as a professional fine artist. I actually do really bizarrely very well at a very, very young start, where I get accepted in a museum collection in Shanghai, where I wasn't really prepared for at that time, to be perfectly honest with you. So I was like majorly propelled there, but in Europe or in the West, I wasn't understood or seen, or they just wanted me to get a master's degree essentially, because you have to play the game. So I then realized it was the financial crash in 2008. So we're kind of almost we're coming through to these years now. So 2008 is a financial crash. I go, oh gosh, I need to retrain. I'm going to go and retrain as a leathersmith at London College of Fashion. So I go and retrain as a leathersmith for 2 years. I get a qualification doing that. And then I set up my own leather goods business for myself in my own new home that I'm managing myself at the age of 26 through to 28. I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate it so much. I've got 4 or 5 interns. I think I had 8 interns at one point. My life force energy was completely depleted. I had zero libido. I had zero sense of divine love, divine law. I was just kind of playing the game. I was fully into the Matrix at that point. I was character Neo, doing that job, paying my taxes, paying my mortgage, and this, that, at a very young age, with a lot of responsibility. Now, bearing in mind, my rising sign, my ascendant is Capricorn, which is very common for Capricornians, to have all of that responsibility from a young age. And something happened. And this is when my awakening came along, where I remember having this thing on my head. So I woke up from my dream. I had this liminal dream where I had essentially this octopus alien that was stuck on my head, which I realized after from people on Gaia TV through interviews, they had similar experiences like that, which in hindsight, I'm able to understand, okay, it wasn't just me this wasn't a dream. This was something that someone else has also experienced. And it was the program. It was the program which was saying, I'm in control of you. I'm dictating what you should think, what you should do, what you should. And I was having panic attacks. I was having asthma attacks. My body was totally rejecting this energy. And I woke up one day after that experience. My body was full shutdown, essentially. And I can't do this anymore. And so a month just before launching my brand, I was pitching at Liberty store, which is, I don't know, like the equivalent of Bloomingdale's or something. I cancelled everything. And the worst part of it was telling my interns that they worked so hard for something that, wasn't going to bear fruit. That was the hardest part. But it was the beginning of my awakening, which I realized was my Saturn return. So I got into, there was this book going around. There was a book knocking about around then. It was The Secret. I was like, oh, let me read this book. My friend comes over to stay. She's just yabbering on about the secret this, the secret that. She stays with me for a month. And she's talking about it. We're talking about it in the garden. We're having drinks. We're having cigarettes. We're chatting. And she's there, Leo energy with her fire and her love and her passion. And I'm just totally hooked. And we're listening to Lana Del Rey. This is very blog era. And so, yeah, I got into it through her, thanks to her. And it really opened my mind. And then I started researching near-death experiences online. For some reason, I got into that. And essentially, my activation channels were completely opened again after a time that I closed them off completely at the age of 11, 12. And now when it comes to ceremonial medicine, well, it came in later for me in the ceremonial setting. I'd experimented a lot, but it came later for me in the ceremonial setting. So in In 2012, I'd sold my house, closed my business. 2012, another interesting initiation year for many people in the community, and I went to live in New York for 3 months and tried to get my creative juices back, essentially. So I started to do collaging. I didn't. You would think in fashion or as a leathersmith, you'd have some creative leeway. There was none of that. It was just, it was the opposite of that. That's why I never talk about it, by the way. In any of my art interviews, I never talk about my fashion years because it was the life-sucking, horrible experience I've ever had in my life.
That's what you hear too about people that get creative and then they turn it into a business. And my sister and my mom actually both went through this. They took up this hobby of like repurposing furniture, and they would paint it and do all these, weird, almost like very artistic things with this new furniture. Maybe it's desks or dressers or side table, whatever it was, right? Kitchen tables. And they would be like literal works of art. You could tell they put hours and hours and hours into this, and so creative. But they found out that the most creative things wouldn't sell. And it was because people wanted, at that time it was like farmhouse stuff. So everybody wanted everything to be white and brown or white and black. And there's just no creativity in there. There's no color, there's no flair, because people want things to be more uniform rather than sticking out in that way. And unfortunately, they both kind of were just like, I don't even want to do this anymore. It feels like a job. I'm not creative with this anything. And that's kind of my relatable story as far as what you were kind of experiencing there. I get it.
Yeah, it was. I didn't do any art. I didn't paint for 4 or 5 years. Yeah, so there's a big chunk out of my CV where there's just nothing going on. Although, yeah, it's just strangely I had this museum collection by 22. Like, it's crazy. And my interns they would look in my studio and they were like, your work is so great. And I just go, no, I don't want to talk about it. So I completely shut it off. So I was in New York and I had the best time. Actually, it was pretty cold. I was there in August, and then obviously the 3 months of winter are just dire in New York, aren't they? And it just happened to be the coldest winter while I was there. So that was great. But I was staying, where was I staying? I was staying in East Harlem, which I really loved, Spanish Harlem. And I had some really interesting experiences. I was staying with a lady who's a professor at NYU, and we had some really interesting conversations about art and philosophy, and just, we vibed really well. She was kind of a mentor that was set on my path for then. And then I went to visit my cousin in Los Angeles. I do come from a creative background, creative family on my Italian side mainly, but creative background overall. Monica, and I went to see her in Los Angeles, and she's a film and TV editor and sound editor for Hollywood. And so basically we had a chat, and I was there for a week, and she introduced me to a gallerist, and I had my iPad, and I said, I haven't really been doing any art, but here's some art that I've been doing in New York, documenting my time there, and a bit in Los Angeles, and a bit in New England, and in Maine, Massachusetts, and Boston. And she said, these are really good. I can't promise you anything, but these are really good. And so that was the end of that conversation. And I fly back to New York. I'm there for another week, fly back. Then I'm like, right, let me get this website sorted out. So I set up a website, and I embarked on my next era, my next stage in my life, where I was listening to a lot of David Bowie, by the way. I chopped my hair like really short into a bob, like bleached it completely. And I was kind of rocking that. So I felt so chic, but kind of edgy and kind of rebellious, and felt so more aligned with who I was, who I am, and socializing again. I was just like, screw, responsibilities. And all of my friends don't even have a house yet. They don't have an apartment yet. They're not married yet. Like, I should be doing what they're doing. I should be going clubbing like they are going clubbing. So I was doing that. So I was doing a lot of that, and then I flew back to Los Angeles. I did more clubbing there, and there I got into conscious community clubbing, which is a whole different experience in itself. Like house music, very like, you know, those kind of like Daybreaker. I got to know the founding member of Daybreaker, the two sisters, and the people that are involved there. I then assisted in being an assistant there for Daybreaker. So I'd wake up at the crack of dawn and volunteer, and would be on a yacht. And there was, you know, no recreational drugs. Obviously, it's like completely clean. But this community ended up being